It'll catch up. Well, we'll be dealing with my computer's problems here trying to... know how this is going to work, but we'll see.
All right, we are live. Can you hear me? We have a group of 8 individuals together. Seven, I guess. I got a couple cameras. And then Gerald is not showing, but he's connected through with us with Jeremiah. And Gerald is WPG Enlighten for Truth on YouTube. We have Mike from Space, we have Mike from Faraday, and we have Frankie Lambo with us today, as well as Jeremiah Pop, and of course myself. We've been putting this one together for a little while. We've had to postpone it a couple times, but we are finally here, and there is a whole bunch of us. So, I guess the new people, or is it like Mike, Gerald, and Jeremiah? Are you guys kind of presenting together and gonna speak, or like?
Well, no, actually, Mike from Space was kind enough to respond to the email and text I sent him within 30 minutes just to do this show today, Bernie. And he has a really, really fantastic and amazing system that he's been developing for quite a number of years and has spent quite a bit of resources in order to research. And it's based on fundamental principles of the universe and the work of Ed Leedskallins, along with a variety of other concepts. So he's the best guy to explain that to you. And of course, I think part of your audience, at least today, knows who Gerald is. So,
right, yeah, absolutely.
The guy in the background.
Of course, right, yeah, so that's Gerald speaking in the background. He's connected with us through Zoom, through StreamYard. So this is Gerald the Black Box whenever you hear Gerald speaking. And
how fitting, eh?
It really is.
How fitting, the Black Box.
And okay, so I guess, Gerald, do you want to start? And then
actually, I'd be honored if Mike wanted to start.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Mike from Space?
Well, there's 2 mics here, so I want to make sure I was the right one.
Well, so we have Mike Faraday, who also just happened to join when I texted him. I was like, Mike, you're one of my the experts, Mike and Jeremiah, and then also usually we also have Michael Boyd, and now we have another Mike from Space. So today we got Mike from Space on Showcase to hear. Oops, wrong one. There we go. Here we go.
That's the one.
There we go. We'll let you go first, and then between each person, I'll let the panel open up and ask questions, sort of thing.
Okay, I guess Jeremiah wanted me to cover the artifact, and I guess I'll start. I'll give you a little background about myself. I started my YouTube channel in 2008, but I really started on the internet back in 1996. So I was formulating a basic unified field theory back in '95. After reading a little from Stephen Hawking and Heinz R. Pagels and a few others. And I came up with a fully kinetic particle physics field theory using projective geometry. So I didn't actually take it anywhere mathematically until many years later. So I found out that if you're only working with a certain mass, just like the same trick that they use to find the mass of the electron, you can relate my theory to the Planck constant, but it's limited in the way it works. So it's mathematically, it's still not a unified field theory. even in a general sense. But as far as practical applications go, it's been predictive in a few fields. And I think two of the major ones I'd have to say are type 1.5 superconductivity. I predicted the geometry for that many years ahead of time. That wasn't realized until a supercomputer simulation figured that out. And you can look that up. It's Igor Babev, spelled B-A-B-E-V, type 1.5 superconductivity. And he basically found the same model that I'd already found way back in 1995. And the other big one was electron neutrino travel. So I predicted that stars were consuming the energy of the universe, and that's basically the smaller half of all the particles in the universe. And as they consume these, they would form new high mass particles that would flow the opposite direction, eliminating the need or requirement for black holes. And I eventually came to realize that there really are no such thing as black holes, and there's what look like black holes, because galaxies are basically a large rotation of mass. So all these stars work together to actually move all these particles of space, these unseen boson particles that are basically the trap for the atom. And my prediction that the electron neutrino was traveling into stars was verified and vindicated years later by the $270 million ice cube experiment in the Arctic, along with all the other neutrinos in the family. So it's quite extraordinary that I still haven't been recognized for that work. But nevertheless, I have never really published a real paper on it, and I only published an ebook. So I haven't really been trying to get recognition. So I've worked on a number of projects. Lately, this one, the artifact, Jeremy wanted me to run this one by you guys, so I'll just do that really quick. I'll make this short. So I have to cover a little background to this before I get into it. Basically, when you're trying to make anti-gravity or cancel gravity or do anything like this, they're really all the same thing. People try to put different names and labels on it and say they're doing one thing, but the fact is that when you really look at the real evidence in a peer-reviewed system, you're always going to find out that the anti-gravity is really heavy ion mass propulsion. So you're concentrating heavy positive ions, and those are displacing the mass which you're trying to levitate or anti-gravitate or dematerialize away from a gravity source. So this all began for me as a trip in particle physics back in '95, but became a research in zero point at the same time, and I didn't realize it. And I started putting a lot more together over the years, and I think my first copyright was in 2003. Then I made another one a lot more advanced in 2016. And I think Jeremy has that book, and he'll share it with you. It's not complete, and it's a version 2 re-edit, because I keep finding more information to add to it all the time. But and the artifact is a simple coil array with a spark gap and capacitor circuit. So it's basically, if you take Stan Deo's birthday cake design, if you're not familiar with that, it's 30 pairs of coils. You have 30 torus coils, 10 pairs on 3 levels. Inside each one, a simple spiral coil wrapped around a nail. And he did this in particle board, just basic junk you can buy from Home Depot. And he connected this up to a 20 kilowatt power supply, an old Army power supply. And the power supply itself, I don't know, it looks like it weighs like 200 pounds at least. It was sitting there on the table, and he had this thing hooked up with 14 AWG wire, jacketed wire from Home Depot. And this thing would send off 20 kV pulses at I don't know how many amps, because he never actually said. But that kind of wire can only handle so many amps at that voltage. So I'd have to say the spacing for those would be about like this. for each one on average. So on average, they're about 3 inches apart, maybe. And you'd have to figure that thing weighed maybe a good 25 pounds minimum. And what he said when he turned it on, it literally ripped itself off the table. And the only thing that kept it from ripping the wires out of the power supply was the fact that it hit the ceiling in his garage. So it left an imprint in the ceiling of his garage. And I thought, well, that's extraordinary. He discovered wave compression, something I'd already been studying on a molecular level that was something that came from Russia. If you ever heard of a Viktor Grebennikov, he made this flying platform that would lift using nothing more than bee wings.
Beetle shells, correct?
Well, they said later it was beetle shells, and yes, beetle wings can do that. But he in fact said that the American that he sent the wing to, that he'd actually used on this device, had actually come from a stingless wasp. So the stingless wasp that it came from had a normal golden body with 2 gray stripes around its body. And you find these things almost identical along the river of Smith River in the Redwood Forest in Northern California, except the ones that I found there had their eyes were swept back, kind of like a zebra or any other common animal that gets preyed upon. But these particular bees in Russia had forward set eyes, just like humans, so they're quite alien looking. I mean, I'd have to say extremely alien looking. But the electron photography study done of these wings showed that they had something in common with beetles too, yes, but they actually had a much more formidable molecular geometry to the chitin material, which chitin, if you don't know what chitin is, it's pure carbon. It's a structure that actually repels every other type of matter.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily pure carbon, right, Mike? But it's a left-handed metamaterial. Chitin is one of those few. Chitin or chitin, I'm not really sure what the proper pronunciation is. It's twisted helical matrix, and it has a really, really unique property where if an electromagnetic field passes across it, in the same way that mica will polarize a laser beam, this will polarize the electromagnetic field to some degree and give them a left-hand twist, which is really, really critical because most things in nature have the right-hand twist, and the gravitational field, we theorize, may in fact have a right-hand twist as well. So if we can untwist it, well, we get some really interesting effects. By the way, Bernie, check the private chat because I've just posted a link to Mike from Space's Rumble account showing Artifact V4, which if you can open it up on screen so that people can see what this artifact looks like, he just showed it in that video. It would be a really good place for people to understand what he's talking about, this physical device.
Yeah, generally all compositions, elements on the periodic table will assemble to form a purely inductive system where they absorb energy around them. This is different. It does absorb energy around it, but it also it has a surface tension that doesn't sit within the surface of the element itself. The surface tension will actually suspend outside the chitin material, which is why it causes a reversal to the field. Yeah, I built 2 of those. And that's just part of it. And that one still has the pipe in the middle, and I changed the design later so I could do a resonant version of a controlled carrier wave system, which was what the original design was going to be. And that's all 3/8 polycarbonate. And I don't know if you ever work with the stuff, but it's not easy to work with. So you just imagine trying to cut all that stuff when it wants to melt under the blade of a saw or a router.
It is probably important to mention too that polycarbonate and polystyrene are both polymers that happen to have a left-handed molecular twist.
So you're looking at these torus coils, and I did this really the wrong way. There's a way you could do this and save yourself a lot of time and headache, but it actually took me a full 15 minutes to wind each one of those torus coils in a hotel room. And I wound 144 of them. So that's enough for both artifacts. Actually, I got some spares. So it's probably more like 148. But the idea of this is an advanced version of the wave compression system used by Stan Deyo. So Stan Deyo had used his as a set of 10, 10, and 10. They're all clockwise wound. And I thought, geez, that's ridiculous. It's actually pretty stupid because the fields can't rotate against one another like gears would want to rotate against one another. So I did mine with clockwise, counterclockwise windings, and soldered all my connections. And basically, the chitin material is something that forms a wave compression on each little like microdot of that wing. This here is just doing that on a much larger scale. And the field that produced back for not leedskallin, but Grebennikov, actually allowed him with only about almost not even quite a 2-to-1 power to weight ratio. When he lifted off, he formed an ionosphere about his little contraption. It was like a fold-up skateboard. It folded up into a briefcase. And the damn thing would actually move at 900 miles an hour. He timed it and on a trip from Ukraine to Moscow and back to be right around 900 miles per hour. Whatever that equivalent was in the metric units they were using, came out to be about 900 for us. So I figured that if you do a coil version, you're actually impacting the space around this device with much more force and amplitude, speed and amplitude than you would with something like the Artifact, which, by the way, he had to tear apart because he was standing on top of the negative part of it, and it made all his joints hurt like crazy. So he tore the device apart because he thought it was evil or something, but he just didn't understand how it worked. So if he had only made 2 of those and hung below them, he would have had a fantastic flying machine.
Yeah, the really unfortunate part is that Grebennikov ended up developing, I think, foot cancer, some kind of cancer there, and he was exposed to what we consider to be a time differential field. Or there was a lot of radiation exposure, could have been strange radiation as well, that unfortunately did him in the long term.
Yeah, you open yourself up to cosmic rays when you do that, and these are particles that are beyond Z boson size that enter our atmosphere. Are normally kept out by the Van Allen belt, but only to a certain degree. Anyway, what you're looking at here is something you don't want to wire in series. So you wire from one coil to the next and the next, all on one layer, and then you jump up to the next layer and the next layer. And from there, the bottom wire goes to your variable spark gap, which is going to be in a borosilicate tube in the bottom center of the device, or you could have it completely set off to the side. Because if you want to run 2 of them and keep them in sync, you want to run off the same spark gap. So on the other side of that, you're going to have your capacitor that sits up within the very center. You see that blue pipe up there. You replace that blue pipe with 4 capacitors that are wound. Now you can't really wind something around a square, but you can try. So that's what I've done. I can't show that to you right now, but it's and it's all contained. But you make your capacitor so that all your coils will do a clockwise rotation towards the inside of the capacitor coils.
I'll try to link to your YouTube video that you talked about with transmitting gold and working with these systems too, because there you do show the wonderful whiteboard diagram of what that actually looks like from the top-down perspective.
Yeah. So normally on a capacitor never makes free energy, but in this case, if you contain this thing inside of a ferrous shell, you can use that ferrous containment, the box for the capacitor basically, as part of the circuit that works like a transformer. So it's a transforming capacitor. And the capacitor system is set up to have like 2 of them will implode as 2 of them explode. They all do the same thing, but they're wired up to do it like that and all be the same shape so that they can rotate against one another as they implode and explode against one another. because they're all wired in parallel. And what you do with that is just send that to the other side of the spark gap, and then you have to spill off all the energy, which is not going anywhere unless it gets spit off at a distance. So you just have a conical coil sitting on top of that fires off like a final stage Tesla coil with a brass ball on top. And mine is only going up like 7. I think the new one is like, it's going to be about 7 to 8 inches, so that I can spill off a good degree of energy away from this compressed field, so that every time it cycles, it would be able to shed those further away from the Z bosons that are getting shed off the perimeter at the base. And that metal part there has actually been replaced with plywood, because I didn't want the metal to be part of the circuit, because it takes up more amperage draw from the caps. And it's also unnecessary to actually use the metal there as any part of the thing. So you really just want to have the field working from the coils, and that would interfere with the field. It was just part of the experiment there. But long story short, if I had to say what the lift of this thing is, you wouldn't believe me. So, if you're just strapping this thing down to a table, it's one thing. But if you're able to actually suspend yourself between a couple of these and run this thing for it only takes a couple seconds, such a massive ionosphere builds up around the damn thing that the field that you're within actually starts to improve the field that these coils operate in. So space itself becomes more superconductive. And to be honest with you, I can't tell you how far it would even go, because I've never opened up the spark gap all the way. But as it is right now, the spark gap it's all set to run it up to 70 kV. And I don't know how many amps.
And you were running this thing at like maybe half its capabilities, which it's probably inverse square as far as your output goes. So, half the gap distance is a quarter of the force, very likely, or some kind of hyperbolic curve like that. So.
Right. The caps I actually used, you talked about different oils when we talked about building caps. And I couldn't find anything at first, and then found it's real easy to get a hold of high temperature silicon oil. So that's what I use on the caps. And
that's awesome.
For a lot of reasons, there's no way in hell I will ever post a video of this thing operating on YouTube or Rumble or anywhere online, because
you got to mute that, Bernie.
I'm going to have somebody knock on my door.
Can you guys explain what that is? The silicon oil?
What's that?
Sure, but you have to pause the video audio that's playing in the background. Otherwise, it's echoing.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Okay, pause that there, Bernie. So what you're looking at there from the top down, that's Mike's diagram, whiteboard diagram, and you see those square capacitors. So those are aluminum polypropylene layered capacitor.
Copper. $500 worth of copper.
Sorry, not aluminum. Yeah, copper polypropylene. That's right. You did get the specialized copper sheets, and you built a cutting machine for both the copper and for the polypropylene insulator. Pretty thick stuff, I think. What was the mils on that?
It's 10 mil on each. And the copper actually ordered the strips because I didn't want to have to cut that stuff. The 10 mil is pretty heavy duty stuff.
Yeah, make sure you guys subscribe to Mike from Sace's channel too. I'm sure Bernie will link that video in the chat, and make sure you subscribe to there too, because he posts some pretty interesting stuff. So sorry to disrupt you, Mike.
So the whole idea of this thing is to make more energy than it loses. So you start it off with a pulse DC, or it'll make its own pulse DC if you just hook it up to a power outlet. So I can basically just take 2 Rs out of a power outlet and put them across spark gap, and you'll get an instant start off the damn thing. But you're going to have to play around with the spark gap to get it right. And that's not always easy. So you might have to do what I did. I had a second spark gap set up so where you can just hold a pair of wires near each other. And once that gets working, then the other spark gap can start working. So you just break those apart. And always wear rubber boots and rubber gloves. That's a must. Whenever you're handling capacitors, you don't want to come near a capacitor or even touch the table near an uninsulated capacitor like this without proper safety equipment. But
yeah, you will become part of this circuit if you accidentally make that connection, as I found out.
yes, exactly. So whenever you're actually looking at the basic science behind 0 point, which I learned way back in 1991 or 90, I think it was. I was reading a paper by Tom Beard, and it said the secret to 0 point is this: pump Z waves in sync yet out of phase implode through a nonlinear medium, and they're in sync yet out of phase. That means that they're the same frequency, but they're coming from a different point in space. And that means that the points in space are between the wave peaks in this case. So as they focus through the infinitely small point, all these pump Z waves that are in sync yet out of phase have to combine to form the sum of their peaks. That means you get a higher frequency out of a bunch of low frequencies. So you can have the lowest frequency you can imagine. All you have to do is add maybe 3 or 100 layers or whatever, as long as it's usually a set of 3 layers on the way in. And once that focuses through, it combines. And normally in a lot of systems, you only need 3 because it can recycle. So you can look at crop circle enigma and actually learn things that I haven't even learned yet, because back in the day, I actually used to study crop circle enigma, and this allowed me to perfect not just my predictions in particle physics, but other things as well in 0 point design. So I realized some of these crop circles out there, and yeah, you're looking at that $500 worth of copper right there. That's 5 of the 6 rolls, 2-inch wide strips of 10 mil.
And what's really fascinating too is that your model had made predictions about what the findings of the Large Hadron Collider would only later verify, and it made those predictions many years before the results were released.
Yeah, and I just made this thing I call the boson format, and it basically covers the alpha and the omega parts of unification. So it encompasses the general idea and state of unification from, everybody's common perspective. So I figured, anybody can understand that, but people haven't adapted to it because they got their brain stuck in this Euclidean concept of photons or strings that suck everything towards the common center point. And,
right. And if you don't mind me asking you a clarifying question, too, the way the coils are configured, just so everybody understands, you have a cylinder coil that's a solenoid style. It's made with a hollow steel tube, so it's got a fairly high refractive index. It's a ferromagnetic material, and then around that you have another larger steel tube which has a toroid wound around it. Now, what's going on here, so people can see, the wire output from the top of the solenoid coil then goes down to the start of the wrap on the toroid coil, and then from the bottom of the toroid coil then goes to the next oppositely colored coil. But what's really happening here in the field is that you have 2 counter-rotating electromagnetically induced fields from the solenoid, which have an axial rotational spin, and then that's your classic north-south magnetic field. And then you also have a up and down polarized spin from your toroid coils, and these things will force the 2 nodes together so that they either go in or go out, and this puts a tremendous stress on the atmosphere.
It's called wave compression. It's the beginning of a good wave compression system right there. I mean, just 3 of those coils side by side create enough wave compression to do fantastic things. And I forgot, there's a very important thing. Each one of these is a little over 3 feet of wire. So every torus coil is about 3 feet of wire, and the other one is about 3 feet of wire. And I actually matched the lengths of them so that they would balance out. I think Deo's was a little different. But if you were to build this, you wouldn't want to do the torus coils the way I did, because I use gas line pipe, and I cut each section a 1/2 inch long, and then I insulated them with a ceramic coating, and then rubber or Teflon, not Teflon tape, but vinyl tape over that to make sure they didn't short out against that thing. So each one is 21 turns on that pipe. But instead of using pipe, all you have to do is take and do what Panasonic did with their microwave ovens. So they're using transformers that are made of a plasticized ferromaterial. And you can get a hold of things like refrigerator magnet material and wrap a coil around it. And that coil will have its charge maintained by the actual ferrous material in the magnet. And if you use that material, it's just fine because they're going to DDoS anyway. It doesn't matter which one's even fluoride. But that way you could wind these really fast and then just wrap that around the base of your tower winding. Save a lot of time and energy doing it that way.
Right, but I did want to just point out for anybody that ever tries to replicate something like this, you mentioned something super critical that almost nobody talks about, and it's balancing the mass or length of the copper. Assuming the copper wire or whatever conductor you're using is the same gauge for the toroids and the solenoids, it is rather important that they be the same physical mass. As Tesla said, your primary and your secondary coil should have the exact same amount of total weight in copper. Regardless of the number of turns, it should be the total same weight. So they were talking about a dynamic nuclear resonance, physical mass resonance that's taking place in those metals themselves as they perform their function.
Yeah, this way you don't end up with a surplus or a waste of energy in either direction. So it would still work if you had a little too much wire on one side or the other, but you're just wasting that wire if you have too much on one side or the other.
Yeah, that makes sense. And keeping things in balance seems to be one of the fundamental properties of all the 6 coil systems that I learned about this year, which all seem to do something very, very similar, which is why I coined the term year of the coils in the first place, is because by the time finally, Gerald got around to getting some of these experiments up and running, and we learned all the amazing things that different coil configurations can do. It was at that point 6 different coils that all had the ability to either hop or hover or generate power, do basically things that would indicate they are tapping into something that's hitherto unknown to modern science.
That's 3/8 tube, by the way. They're inside that gas line tube section stuff I told you about. And if I was anybody else wanting to build this thing for the first time, don't do it like this. You would want to use plywood, and you would want to separate these things by another 1/2 inch at least, because it's not necessary to have them so compact. But I wanted my prototype to be very compact for a couple of reasons.
I do quite like the compactness of it too. It's a nice dense package that can lift realistically. I mean, like you said, people wouldn't believe you, but I think they would. I know what the power level capabilities of these things are, and they have absolutely nothing to do with watts input in the conventional sense. It's not at all a linear relationship at all.
I don't know if I ever mentioned this, but this thing is actually a particle accelerator. I'm gonna leave you to figure out why. It's pretty simple. It's a loop circuit, so
it's really a beautiful design, and the way that it recycled its own power back into its field is pretty fantastic. In that perfect out of phase way, where the power that is displaced gets sent back into the system as a differential, and it just keeps on doing that pulse after pulse after pulse as it rings.
So the pump Z waves are actually a result of the capacitor layers, but there's something else taking place here as well. And if you look at the 3 layers, it's 3 layers for a very good reason. It's because that every one of those layers is acting like a dynamo. So when we reverse engineered Coral Castle, which took 2 years, and it shouldn't have taken that long, but in 2 years we figured out everything about Coral Castle, and even took samples off the flywheel itself when nobody was looking. And that's because there's a distributor contact point and a DGOS reflex point inside of that, embedded in the cement, where these little balls stick out of the concrete in the flywheel, which is and a lot of people don't even know this, but if you look at the Coral Castle flywheel, you think those magnets are part of the metal base and the metal top, but they're not. They're actually insulated with a cloth that's been impregnated with masonry material. So the flywheel itself has no connection to the 24V magnet array. But I can't waste your guys' time and explain the whole Coral Castle device tonight.
Well, there's definitely opportunities for future live streams too, where we would love to get into that because, man, if anybody has done the serious amounts of research, it's in that book, and I will see if at some point after Gerald speaks, I will try to get the link or put a temporary link up to your PDF version of that book where people can kind of go through it and check out the concepts. It's done a really nice job highlighting the fundamental physics. It'll be difficult for people to understand for sure, but it's there.
That's amazing. So you're talking about Ed Leedskallins' book on electric magnetism, correct?
Well, he wrote his own and spent quite a bit of time and resources in order to.
Oh, Mike
write
has.
this. Yeah, Mike has a book,
Amazing.
and I'm going to try and see if I can get it linked.
Okay.
I got to tell you right now, the most interesting thing I ever discovered about Coral Castle was the tetragrammaton, or what I prefer to call the double Metatron system in there, where it takes side-by-side fields of charge. A charge has to spin. A charge cannot be stationary. So charge is a pair of magnetic fields around another pair of counter-rotating magnetic fields. And in the flower life system, if you implode this thing in a three-dimensional geometry, and you're trying to concentrate this into the most energy you can get from 24 to 6, you end up with the tetragrammaton, which is basically, it's taking a cube that you cannot even see, but the invisible lines of the cube actually travel through parts, empty spaces in the Coral Castle device. So there's a caster wheel. It's only about this big, and it's got holes in it. And I found it so amazing that when I did the 3D geometry on Blender, which is a CAD program to model this whole thing, that the tetragrammaton sits perfectly lined up to pass through all the holes and around this thing, so that those fields cannot be obstructed when they're spinning around. And they don't spin around like they do outside. They'll do so in like a three-phase environment where they'll suddenly spin in one direction and then they'll have to suddenly reverse. And that's the whole key to reaching a superconductive state, is taking advantage of things like the three-phase state.
Man, that is so absolutely relevant. Actually, before we got on the stream, we were having that same conversation before we went live, and so that's just completely relevant now. You can basically have a two-wire system that can generate a three-phase type of output.
Yeah, it had the flywheel itself as a single dynamo. Then you had another one, another dynamo that was a starter motor with a 3.77-inch diameter with 32 poles, 16 working poles, if you're to do that with a neodymium dynamo. And that set, I've got the high-resolution picture from the guy who does, I forget his name, but he runs a magazine, and he does stuff on the History Channel. He lives down in Mexico, I think, but he did this webpage, and I found that he had the photograph that I had, but in high resolution. And he had some red letters over it. It was like, hey, can I get a copy of that without the red letters over it? So he sent me one, and it took a little argument, but I got it. And I said, I won't ever publish it. I just want to see it. So I got a close-up of this thing. I could see that that dynamo that they've got sitting there inside Coral Castle today, it's this starter motor that's just sitting aside. Well, that thing sat vertically on top the timing post, which is a post that's an iron case post with 3 copper windings inside of it, all separated by nothing but paper. It's just wax paper. And that was actually the 0 point for the main 0 point for the device, where it folded waves over there. And the other dynamo that made it 3-phase, so you had just a single wire leading from a magneto block on the outside of the flywheel, and that would lead up to the top tripod. Inside that box sat the other dynamo, another 12 or 24 volt starter motor from an old truck. Back then they used they didn't have starters and alternators like we have today. They used something different. They only had a starter dynamo that sat within the belt system of the engine for these trucks. So it would start the truck, and then it would generate energy as the truck was running right there on the belt system. So from there, in this mystery box, which all the old photos, you can't find any of them until some Japanese tourists took some videos, and you take a clip out of one of the videos, you can see the wires running while he had the progress of Coral Castle was going on. You could see how he had this thing that was shaped like this up top, where it was carrying two of the wires from Coral Castle over to the top of the tripod. And it's interesting because people, when they heard him working at night, they heard a hum that was coming from there. It was always these two wires that were vibrating as they repel each other with dielectric force.
That sounds really much like what John Keeley was talking about too, where his wires would sing, and he was able to transmit what he described as audio through physical hard cables that were, somewhat springy or flexible. It's not like they were tension, like the old cup phone system, but vibrations were able to travel through those physical wires and be transmitted to whatever they were affecting in significant ways.
And I guess the last short story I'll tell you before I pass the torch to the next guy here is that, and this is the most interesting, funny thing about the Coral Castle is two kids snuck up on Ed in the middle of the night, and they had to see what he was doing, and they caught him in the act, and he didn't know they were there. I don't think he ever did, but they say they saw him floating one of these 2-ton plus wall stones, or probably one of the wall stones, like it was a blimp. And he had in each hand, he had what looked like an ice cream cone. And I thought, what the heck? What would an ice cream cone be doing there? I said, well, it's got to be a coil. And why would he have two? Well, it's got to have something to do with interferometer, interfering waves. So if you take a conical coil and you aim it from one perspective, and you have another one identical, and they're both hooked up to just a ground stake, then what's going to happen is the super heavy ions that are completely lacking mesons from the superconductive environment, they're raining down off this 30-foot high tripod motor casing, and they want to go somewhere. So they'll even go sideways through the chain that's connected to the rock or the stone that he's moving around. And in order to get to ground, you literally walk one of these things sideways, way off to the side. You could probably go a good half mile out or quarter mile out away from the side of the tripod. Maybe that's exaggerating it, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. But yeah, those conical coils are what these kids thought were ice cream cones, and they're really just field grounding coils. They didn't give off any frequency or anything. They were just there to provide a link to ground for that heavy field coming off the third dynamo. So if you have any questions about that.
Do we have any questions? Who wants to go first? I'm sure there are a few.
I do. I have a question. So is there a way to monitor all noise of all I guess if everything is EM, electromagnetic spectrum, but some say that there's not more than just EM. Is there a way to detect all noise? I guess all fluctuation movement or whatnot with just an antenna or something, and a way to I guess
to detect it.
Noise.
What you're talking about is a frequency counter, and they have satellites that do that. But I'm not an electronic technician. My father was. He's a senior electronic telecommunications engineer, but I don't get into that. I'm actually terrible with electronics. I really just know physics and some very basic concepts in electronics.
Oh, well, it seems like it goes hand in hand, though. I mean, I know they use certain wavelengths to detect whatever that wave object is, shaking at. It's vibration, it's resonance, but that's why it detects it. So I was thinking though, is it possible to detect all motion with even if it's decoherent as all get out, there's no filter, and you're able to sense all motion, and it's on every frequency level, but it's it's like white noise, it's is there a way can you be sure that it's detecting all motion an antenna? That's what I'm trying to say. I understand that you said about don't have
well, it's a bad question for me. Again, I'm not that type of engineer. I can tell you how to absorb all wavelengths at once, and Any
Okay.
zero-point device will actually do that. It will cause all radiant RF, all white noise, to synchronize and implode into the center focus of 0 point.
Huh. But would the
So
object
literally
heat up or
all
no?
ambient kinetic waste that happens when you walk across the floor, or you drive down the road, or
Yeah.
basically your atoms are just sitting there. They're always absorbing and giving off frequency. So as they're doing this, the high energy frequency is actually used to polarize the atom, while the low energy frequency is something that the atom radiates from the core out to the bosons and basically expands as a reverse continued fractal, an expanding wave.
Okay, but since like some frequency wavelengths are, let's say, disorganized more than more organized wavelengths, that's where like ineffective energy waste is, right? Which makes heat. Like, and that's the analogy I'm getting out of it.
Well,
Does that
heat
make
has
sense?
everything to do with geometry and really nothing
Yeah.
to do with frequency unless you're talking about a specific instance. So you'd have to give me an instance and I could describe it.
I just like two vibrations of two objects are trying to fuse together like a chemical reaction, and like some of the aggregate of the phases or wavelength measures, like, oh no, like the two
You know what
signals.
charge confusion is?
Charge fusion?
Charge confusion.
Oh no, what is it?
The reason there's a wave relationship and a reason for Tesla's 369, and the reason for that is charge confusion. Whenever you have three sine waves, 1, 2, 3,
Yes.
and they are forced to ride on a carrier wave, imagine a circle being drawn around all those three waves.
Yeah.
So you have a negative and positive that started out, and they expand, and then they contract, and you do that 3 times. So imagine you have like 3 spheres or 3 circles surrounded by a larger circle. Basically,
Yeah.
You can look online, you can see images of fractals, and they look just like that.
Okay.
Charge confusion is a fractal. It means that charge will be a thing. It exists because there is an argument among these columns of magnetic current.
Okay.
It takes 3, 6, or 9 columns of magnetic current to form charge confusion. So it can look something like the rodent coil, which uses 9 points, or you can look at leedskallins device, which causes them to do another thing. There's all different types of geometries you can use and still apply the same very basic principle.
Yes.
I actually modeled atoms using this principle because they all work on 0 point principle.
0 point is basically, though, when there's no angles of freedom, right? The other pulses cancel each other out.
Angle of freedom. Well,
like, when a sine wave, you have your radian circle, and then you have your different angles.
It's forcing everything to run on the implosive frequency and the exit frequency. So you really have only 2 frequencies. So if you run anything 0 point, you're going to have a complete lack of any energy running outside of that system. So if you have a battery, it's going to get drained. If you have a radio or a cell phone, it's just going to stop working because all electrons can no longer move freely in all the different directions they need to in a microchip. They're all forced to on a linear plane that's basically compressed and then forced to have linear lines about it that implode towards only the center of that 0 point.
Okay, so like when they all cancel each other out, they lose. There's no energy, so it's like destructive interference, right? Complete destructive interference.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you have; it all becomes part of what white noise is.
Huh? And that's cool.
Right, and when you cancel out all electric and magnetic field vectors in the same volume of space, even though there seems to be an amplitude of 0 in either the B field or the E field, that energy comes out the side past that interference zone with the same amount of energy that it came in with. And so even though the vectors go to zero, it has to be stored somewhere, and that means space itself is storing these things with a zero vector potential. And what's the other thing that can store zero vector potential? Well, it's the temporal field, or the time flow right within that physical volume of area. So obviously space and time are doing something to compensate and hold that energy while it transits through this phase canceled zone.
And this is the destructive part of it, but what about when it's constructive, complete constructive? What happens with that? You know, when the pulses align on the same line as the other signal.
Well, that depends on what you're resonating at. So normally like with this device that I have here, you can take the carrier wave and move it using what I call high force hydraulic punch of neutrino force. So basically, the electron neutrino is basically the key to everything in the universe, and it's not the only key. There are actually 3 others. And believe it or not, this gets into the Bible, where I think it was in Matthew or something, where he was taken up into the heavens, and God showed him the 4 pillars that hold up the heavens. Basically, he was describing, in my great opinion, not to brag too much, but I'm convinced this is what he meant, is God showed him that there was the 2 poles of magnetic current, negative and positive, that move into the stars, and then the 2 poles that move out from the stars. Now, matter itself is actually a 3rd pole that gets caught in between. It's a disturbance. And you never actually recognize the existence of the 2 other poles until that is actually present, if you think about it. So in a galaxy, galaxies have to eat their way through space. They have to actually move through space in order to exist, in order to function. So you don't never find stars too far away from a galaxy before they die off. They have to.
I do have a question about poles, though. So, like, when you refer to poles,
Jay, because then we got to switch over right after your question, because
we
Gerald and I
gotta have Gerald.
I want to take up the whole night on you guys. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Just real quick, this last question. So you mentioned poles. Do you mean the positive and negatives, or do you mean more frequency sine waves are created? I'm thinking of mathematical. Okay.
Poles are actually elementary particles. So the electron neutrino with a mass of 0.00012 of the mass of the electron is the first most hydraulically superior particle. And then you get to all the other particles by simply stacking them up in a side-by-side column of negative and positive. So you just, if you find a particle mass table on the internet, you can figure it out. It's pretty simple.
Okay. All right. So that means that
everything is de Broglie waves. In other words, it's all de Broglie waves.
Well, that helped out a lot. I have to read that then. That's what was sent earlier.
Yeah, read the book. Read my book. You'll understand so much more.
Yeah,
okay. I just put
we
in the
got our
chat
homework ahead of us.
That said, I will pass the torch.
Well,
thank you so much, Mike, for coming on and responding.
But before you go, Mike Faraday or Frankie, do you have any questions for Mike from space?
Yeah, but I have to read his book first. I feel like a kindergartner now.
I'll make sure that you get that. I'll make sure you guys get a copy of that.
Could you send me? Can you guys put a link in the video to the name of the book? I ordered leedskallins' book and it got lost on Amazon.
Well, the link is in the chat.
I built the perpetual motion holder, and Bernie was saying before that we're focusing all this energy on magnetic coils, but we should be paying attention to the non-magnetic metals. You know, maybe we should make coils with the metals that are not magnetic, like brass and, you know what I mean?
Like mixing them, like bismuth and aluminum, like portions, stuff like that, and the nano coating aspect of it as well, breaking down the outside so that it interacts with the plasma fields a lot better.
Right. So for me, I started in this building drones, racing drones, and I got into electricity. I'd been soldering forever. I'm a tattoo artist. I had to solder early on, 20 years ago. And I started studying this stuff, and I started looking at electronics and realizing that but there's a bunch of holes in it, you know, like things aren't making sense, things aren't aligned right. What I just heard from him, it's just a whole different wormhole. I feel like I'm down a wormhole really deep right now, and his goes like to the center of the universe or to the earth. I have to read the book for sure. I have not read leedskallins' books, any of them. But I've tried to build some of his stuff, and I'm an amateur. I'm a tattoo artist. I have no education.
Well, Ed did not
Definitely listen to what you just said is like, I have to read the book. I shouldn't even be talking to you. You know what I mean? I don't have the knowledge to ask you a question right now. Sorry.
Yeah, Ed didn't. Am I still here? Can anybody hear me here?
Oh, we can hear you, Mike. We can hear you.
Sorry. It's
So he didn't give away everything that he could have when he wrote that book. He basically just gave everybody a stepping stone. So he describes magnetic current and a couple other things and a little bit of cryptic advice. But really, if you want to learn about magnetic current, the truth is you want to read my book, which is free. Just click on that link. It's in the chat here. And if you have questions, I also posted my email on there if you have questions about anything in the book, but do read the book first from beginning to end. At least try to cover the physics part of it. And any part you don't understand, you might have to read over, but I've tried to make it as simple as I can for a first-time reader.
Mike, do you mind reposting the link in the private chat, and then I'll put it also in the live chat to your book? No.
Yeah, it's right there. Join the
email, and then there's the YouTube and the Rumble links, but I can't find the.
I haven't posted it yet. I have to.
It's not in there.
I'm sorry. Could I ask, who's the guy that's speaking? I can't see his face. Gerard?
Jeremiah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Jeremiah.
Sorry.
Jeremy was in here for a little bit, but he had to dip out.
He'll be back. He's yeah.
I really want to talk to him. I didn't know about the guy that just spoke. The other Mike. There's a bunch of mics.
Yeah.
Never mind.
This was the perfect
I'll ask him to chat later.
show for Mike to talk about his.
I got a bunch of questions for all you.
Everyone's going to the same.
That's the guy that just spoke, and I'm not ready to question him yet.
All right, well, let's take a jump over before Gerald and I get kicked off again, and let's see if we can get on, and hopefully this routing audio through works all right.
Let us get Gerald back on, and this is so Gerald is WPG Enlighten for Truth on YouTube, and let's play a couple of his little videos here.
Well, let's just get a quick audio check from Gerald. Make sure that everybody can hear him. You on, buddy?
Check 1, check 2, check 1.
We can hear you.
Can't hear him.
It's awesome to actually get all these people in the same room together. If only Dan Foster's connection.
Oh, I have a question.
Ask a question. And is Gerald still there?
If you guys don't mind, I have a question while you're looking for him.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Ed leedskallins left a plaque in his bedroom that had a weird number code saying it was the secret of the universe or the something to that. And my question was for Mike from space. Is that? Can you have any idea what that is, or you know what I'm saying?
Plaque was. What did it look like? What did it say?
It said the answer to the question of the universe is 1257 / and he gave a long number code. And I've been wondering about this forever. I compared it to the rodent codes and the numbers.
Right, and it's been.
I hope I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's been so many years. So I've got a friend who
This is my
worked on
first time ever doing this, and I don't even know what I'm doing.
So I got a friend who worked on the Coral Castle project with me. His name is Jack Powers, and he's in Utah. And by now he's probably having dinner. So
Yeah.
he's a guy that knows all the codes of the Coral Castle. There's actually codes in the placement of things.
Yeah.
There's a lot to do with the planets. So like Saturn is a key with its tilt, and they didn't even know this back then, but how Saturn has a hexagonal pole. It's actually got a 6-around-1 geometry, just like the center of the Coral Castle device did, because it's got out there in space. It's actually got.
I had no idea about what you're talking about until just now, and I've studied that thing. I meant to go there forever. I didn't at the time that I could have. I didn't know there was any kind of mapping to the system. I didn't know any of this. I know all about the doors that are 40 tons that move barely, like in the windows that are like aligned with the stars, but I didn't know there's any kind of weird code that anyone discovered. I know it's got that shit-eating grin, like the Mona Lisa smiling at you, like the pyramid does, like saying, "Hey, there's something here. You need to figure out what it is." You know?
Yeah, I'm embarrassed because I should know this. It rings a bell, but it's been so many years since I worked on that system. But
right.
But he did talk a lot about the planets, and he may have known a little bit more about Jupiter than anybody else has laid on. See, Jupiter, if you look at the North Pole of Jupiter, look at the NASA pictures of it, and you'll see it has something kind of similar to what Saturn has, but not the same. It's actually got these giant storms. There's a giant storm in the top center, surrounded by 8 slightly smaller giant storms that are all counter-rotating hurricanes, basically, that just constantly sit there.
Man.
Well, that actually is the same image as my Format 9 geometry, which is a superconductive geometry that I had on the web back in '96. It's the final geometry to boson formatting. And what that really means is that Jupiter itself holds within itself a superconductive field. And it makes sense because any metal, even tungsten, if you drop it into the atmosphere of Jupiter, is going to melt. All the metals there, being liquid, being dielectric, working together, are going to form some kind of massive gel-like rotating magnetic current field that, of course,
a drying coil, maybe a drying coil as it gets cooled.
Say again?
I was saying, and would you say that after it dries, after reaching the surface, it cools into a coil or some sort of
no, I'm saying the whole planet is it's liquid metal, at least even on the outside, because it's simply so hot.
It doesn't look like a place I want to ever go for vacation.
Yeah, I mean,
a bunch of rotating,
if not the whole thing is liquid metal, and NASA is even scared as hell of putting satellites in orbit around that thing. They've got a satellite out there that's, I don't know how many millions or billions the thing costs, but it's covered in titanium, and the thing will still get crushed by the radiation that's shooting off from this thing at thousands of miles away from the planet.
Yeah, and the Van Allen radiation belt. Do you think we went to the moon, or should I not? Or do you prefer not to answer?
Oh, we absolutely went to the moon, and the reason they didn't bring back video footage and they had to fake video footage of moon landing is because they had so much damn alien material. They landed in an alien garbage dump, and everything they found was so shocking they didn't want to reveal it to the American public. So they had to start over from scratch just so they could explain to the American public where all their taxpayer dollars went to.
Holy shit. Pardon my language. Jeez, the wormholes get deeper and deeper. But I'm stoked.
You're down the rabbit hole now, man.
Say again?
Mike, it's Mike from Faraday Research. I got a question for you about your device. Is there a large electrostatic component to your device?
He's asking Mike from space. That's Mike from Faraday asking you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Am I still in the queue? Is he asking me a question?
Yeah. He's asking you, Mike. Mike is asking Mike.
This Mike.
Yeah, Mike from Faraday.
Okay, Mike from space. I'm Mike from space.
Yes, Mike is asking you, Mike from space.
I'm gonna mute my mic.
Okay,
I knew this was going to be confusing.
So ask your question again, please. Sorry. I
Yeah,
thought
your device with all the coils, is there a very large electrostatic discharge coming off it?
Yes, it has to give off a massive negative ion stream. Basically, it's a discharging testicoil final
Right.
stage that comes off the peak of it.
Okay, the second question would be is, do you have access to a cobalt glass? It's a cobalt blue glass. Hold on a sec. I'll put my camera on here.
No, I do not have access to cobalt blue glass. What is that?
Yeah, this is how it looks like. You can order them online. It's a
Okay.
cobalt blue. Now, for me asking you this question is, when you fire up your device, if you look through this cobalt glass, you might be able to see orgone energy, because orgone is a conjugate of electrostatics. So if you look through this cobalt blue glass, you might be able to see an aura form around your device.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. It's cobalt in glass. Yeah, there's some other interesting lenses out there and polarizing materials that are even more fantastic. I'd love to spend another 10 years of my life researching all those, but
have you ever done any like biological tests, like turn the device on near a plant or water or something of that nature?
well, the last thing I want to do is turn this thing on anymore at my house, because it interferes with all radio frequency in the entire neighborhood. And I live in a suburban neighborhood close to other houses. And my neighbors are actually just moving out. They moved out just last night. I have to wonder if they're moving out has anything to do with what I've been doing in my garage.
Yeah, maybe stuff is floating in their rooms and they don't know what's happening.
No, I don't think it's anything like that, because anytime I'll do anything, it's just really quick. But
yeah, that would definitely be interesting if you're actually creating orgone, and if plants respond to that. So if you turn on your device, even at a low level, and put some plants near it, the plants will actually shift their direction and point towards your device. And Eric Dollar did this years ago. He made a orgone accumulator box.
yeah, what that is that's actually going to be the positive trailing field that comes off the artifact, I believe, if I remember orgone correctly, at least how people define it. But plants will actually grow at an accelerated rate in the presence of the Z boson field, which is, if not still superconductive, as it rains off within, at least 6 inches or a foot from this thing. It'll still be so inductive to meson particles that it literally will drag particles from ground through the DNA or RNA particles that are there and cause them to repair or grow or whatever the thing wants to do at the time. So you could explain a lot of things. You could heal cancer or a wound with this thing. There's a case on this TV show Sightings, I remember from years ago, back in the 80s, where a guy he'd cut his hand wide open with a chainsaw cutting wood. And on the trip home, he had his hand in a bandage and had his hand on top of the pickup truck to keep it cool. So he was keeping his hand cool, and a UFO, a purple sphere, flew right over the top of him over the highway, and about a eighth of a mile or so, not that far down the highway, just stopped, and it hovered there for a couple minutes and took off. And he was like, okay, well, now the truck starts again. And he took off, and then he realized that his hand had stopped hurting. So he took the bandages off his hand to see that it had completely healed itself.
That's pretty incredible.
I think we lost Jeremiah there, and Gerald will probably be right back in rebooting the sound, because it sounded like we couldn't hear Gerald for a bit. Any more questions, Mike, for Mike?
Let me see. What's you said you're using a spark gap for your device, correct?
Yeah, spark gap runs the carrier wave. So
Okay.
the carried wave is the layers of the capacitor. And additionally, there's a three-phase wave that rides on that system. And that is because of the three layers of the artifact.
Right. Are you just using open spark gap, or are you actually using like
Just open spark gap.
tube? Just an open spark gap.
Yeah, I mean, actually using pinballs.
Okay. Do you find when you got that device up and running that it kind of sucks the power out of your cell phone or any electronic device that's nearby?
Well, I wouldn't be dumb enough to keep anything electrical near it, so I run it
Yeah.
as far as away from everything as I can.
No, because I work a lot with spark gap myself, and I find if I keep the cell phone too close to it, then the cell phone battery starts to heat up, so I have to put it in the other room. So
yeah, it's quite possible you can ruin your cell phone if you
Yeah.
even get too close to that.
Yeah.
Hey, is there a way to calculate how the speed of the spark gap? Like
Yes,
in old-timey tattoo machines.
Hey guys, we got to do another test again. Sorry to cut you guys off, but we keep on getting kicked out. So this is the last chance that we're gonna get. We're gonna have to get Gerald on. So let me just do another quick test here. Gerald, you want to give him a quick check? Audio check.
Audio check, test.
Bernie, can you hear him?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. So we better jump over to Gerald before we end up having no more opportunities to do that. So let's just switch over. I'm sorry to disrupt it and cut it off right in the middle of the questions Q&A, but we got to do it now. So let's go.
All right, here's the setup. Same coil, same ferrite cores, 60 winds of copper each going to their own separate full wave bridge rectifiers, and then to these 3 identical meters. We're going to see what we get from the outside of the coil. All right, same pulse rate function generator. From the function generator, 10,000 hertz, square wave. The power supply is 12 volts, 1 amp power plug from. All right, let's see what we can do here.
Yeah, you want to pause audio on that video, Bernie?
I haven't seen what I got output on this, so let's just see.
Let's go ahead and mute the audio from that video. And then let's make sure that Gerald's mic is active. I think he's set to the background right now.
There we go. We got Gerald back. So that's just a little quick demo of what he literally has like 30 or 50 different coil designs. I'll let you take it away, Gerald.
Hey, how are you, Bernie? Hey, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear.
Are you guys still there?
We can hear you loud and clear, my friend.
All right.
Loud and clear.
Yeah, okay, so I've made over, I'd have to say somewhere around 250, 300 different coils, and not all of them worked. Just so you guys are aware. Actually, a lot of them crashed and burned, but, it was a way of learning. And I don't know. I don't know really where to start. I mean, I guess I could start with me. I'm a bit of an inventor. One of those backyard kind of dealies. I got into coils when the internet, YouTube just started to blow up back in 2008. I had a different channel called The Wisdom Walker. I used to converse with John Bendini once in a while, and I used to watch him and Russ Grease. And, I did lots of Tesla's different experiments. I've built Tesla coils. I've built lid motor circuits, jewel thief circuits, you name it, I've played. I love to invent. I love to experiment. And I love to see things blow up at the same time. You got to have fun with it. So as you were seeing on the screen there, that bigger coil that I was explaining, it works on 7 different instabilities in order for it to create one stability. It works on the dichotron instability. It's based on basket winding, the proximity effect, parasitic capacitance, the skin effect, impulse power, and shape energy. So I know those are all different terms that everybody in this community has heard of before. And I figured that if you can put them all into one system and make that system work as a whole, you might get something else different on the other end than you've been expecting. So this is kind of impromptu. I wasn't really ready to do a presentation, but here I am. Where do I start? As far as the coils go, they're bifilar. The one that you were seeing on the screen there has 750 feet each side. It's bifilar wound, and it does multiple different things. The one that you were seeing on the screen was through induction, it picks up excess energy. So I can pulse 12 volts, 1 amp in through the primary, and I put a capacitor closed link on the secondary, and I'm able to put pickup coils around the outside, and those pickup coils pick up the excess energy, and I can run that as a 3-phase and to a load. So as far as how much excess energy is going, that's being measured it's in the process of being professionally measured through Jeremiah and through a few others as well. I don't know, Jeremiah, did you have any questions to sort of lead me to?
Well, yeah, and first thing I want to mention is, you guys in the chat, if you want to ask Gerald a question, just have a question in the chat, put it in all caps so Bernie can see it easily, or just make sure that you list it as a question, and let's get these questions in if you guys have in detail.
Well,
there's so much people at different levels, right? So they're going to learn different things.
We'll play here on one of your other videos, Gerald, from the Year of the Coil series. You made fields, and it shows about 5 or 6 of your different coils, and then from there, as I show them, I think you won't be able to talk, and then I'll have to bring you back on, so it'll be like 2 minutes, and then we'll have some questions for sure.
Okay, fair enough. I could explain some of the...
No, we already got a question here.
Let's just start with that 3 amp wall plug.
So pause the audio.
And I have a function generator.
Yeah, just pause that
okay, so I think we can still hear Gerald, actually. Gerald, do you want to try talking?
Yeah, I'm still here. I was just going to say I can explain some of the experiments that I did with that question. Go ahead.
Yeah, the first question that came up in the chat right off the bat is, could you talk about the safety measures for operating the coil?
Well, it definitely has to be grounded. It has to be grounded either on the secondary or through the pickup coils on the outside. The reason being is I've actually that's the right word, I have gotten some damage on my arms, just above my wrists, due to an impromptu experiment that I shouldn't have done that day. I was in a hurry. I wasn't watching what I was doing. I didn't ground out the system properly. And I had the system on, and I was doing some measurements. And I put my hands into the center of the coil, and I'll show it on video, but I basically have 2 strips of what looks like multiple freckles, but they're at a 45-degree angle on both wrists. And what it looks like is if I put my hand inside of a bubble from different angles. So as I show you that on video in a future video, I'll explain properly how that damage occurred, because it wasn't there before the experiment, and now, well, it's kind of ugly, to be honest with you. So the safety precautions on this is it has to be grounded, or excess energy in the room occurs, especially close to the coil itself. There's a near field, a far field, and a, what was it that you called it, Jeremiah?
The Fresnel zone.
The Fresnel zone, there you go. the foggy field.
Right, where you get the near field instabilities, which don't follow conventional Lenz law or Maxwellian dynamics, because the electric and the magnetic field vectors are not at 90 degrees to each other at the near field or in the near field. It's only after they've traveled out some distance that you end up with the correct redshift, blue shift between the two of them, and they balance out into an electromagnetic wave that can be picked up by conventional equipment. But the funny thing is, you stick a regular EM meter, on the outside of this thing, and you can pick up a transmission, say up to maybe 16 to 25 volts per meter, which is already way into the dangerous range where the meter is beeping and saying, warning, don't get close to this thing. But then you go into it and you get these really erratic readings, and it's not because it's freaking out the meter, it's because those fields there are not aligned in such a way that they induce a current into the pickup antennas on the inside of that detector, because they're not aligned correctly. So this is where you start to get into your scalar potentials and your time displacement, where both field vectors are effectively stressing emissivity and permeability and permeativity of space-time, or your mu and epsilon are both simultaneously affected in the same direction, and so space has to physically change its velocity in that volume to hold the extra energy, in the same way that Mike from Space's system must do the same thing.
Yes, Mike's from Space system has pretty much the same principles, just a slightly different variation. The coil systems themselves are completely different, but the aspects that Mike from Space's system pretty much aligns with what mine does, although I believe I create a vortex in a different way. It's through a series of line inductors shaped in a geometrical form. So it's different in that sense, but it does create the same aspects. When he was discussing interferometry, because of the cones that were used in Coral Castle, basically two lines of force that were interacting, and then a third line of force shows up afterwards. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that correctly, but when it comes to the coil, because it's bifilar and you're pulsing your primary and your secondary, of course, it comes out as a signal as well. You're creating a third signal in the center. So the power of 3 is involved there in order to get your etherical energy out, your excess.
Right, so here you're effectively canceling your electric and magnetic field vectors in a similar way to what Mike was talking about. But in this case, the way that it's set up and the way that it does it, it's not relying on ferromagnetic elements. It's not relying on various core materials, so you're not having those kinds of issues there. And this is an entirely air core system that operates with pretty much just
Open
copper
air
wire.
core,
Right.
Yeah.
So the only thing that can realistically have any kind of BH curve, any kind of response there, is physical vacuum itself, with the exception of what tiny volume of atmospheric gases happen to be present in that area. Oh, did your audio get cut? Oh man, I think they just kicked Gerald's mic. He's still connected, but
All right. Well, while you figure that out, let's play his video.
All right, here's the setup. I got a 12 volt 3 amp wall plug, and I have a function generator that will be pulsing at 7.83 hertz square wave. I will turn it up to 5 volts pulse. This is the magnetic field that's showing now. This is the other EM field. I don't know if I can, oh, it will show it. All right, it's data logging that data right now. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to turn it up. I'll leave the EM field meters exactly where they are just to show you how much of a field this could produce at 5 volts. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll show you the tri-field meter. I'll show you the data log. I don't want to get too close. It shouldn't even be that close now. All right, let's switch it to an EM field. Let's switch it to an RF field. Remember, this is pulsing, so you can see the pulse in the RF field. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, so unfortunately, he got kicked on his end. His connection just got cut, and my guess is that his internet might have been taken out. Again, this is something that's happened before multiple times, and I'm not sure if he will be able to get back online. I'm hoping he can.
Hey, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
A big part of me thinks that what we're doing is changing the universe in the same way that this transmutation thing works. The universe doesn't like it and it fights you. And this is not evil from anybody. It's just the universe doesn't want to be changed. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm just throwing it out there.
I mean, you said it's what? It's you said a word there. It's what the universe is?
I'm saying that the more I get into this, the more I realize that I'm actually going to be able to change the universe in an unnatural way. And the universe doesn't like that. And it fights me.
Well,
I'm pretty sure. This is just a thought. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying it's a theory I believe in, but I'm saying I'm kind of thinking it could be a theory.
I guess I would say, as far as these systems go, you can try to force things in an unnatural way and force your way into these categories. But ultimately, I think what these systems reveal to us is that they're operating on a...
Oh, you're breaking up. Or is it me?
Jeremiah, you still there?
You see what I'm saying? The universe doesn't want it to happen, maybe. But that's too bad because we're sentient beings. And clearly it's being...
Or someone
we're being given the ability.
Jeremiah, are you still there, man? Or did we lose you too? Are they taking down both Gerald and then Jeremiah? All right. Well, while we figure out these technical difficulties and hopefully get Gerald and Jeremiah back on, here is another one of Gerald's videos. Come on now. Is it gonna work? Is it gonna work? We got Jeremiah back.
All right, let's...
Gerald. Do we get a Gerald back?
I'm muted, I bet.
I just got kicked off, so we're going to go ahead and reestablish the connection again. I guess it doesn't matter how many times we get kicked.
Kind of
we're going to go ahead and try to force this through anyways. And
I started out in 2005, roughly.
Man, this is the perfect time for me to talk about.
Somewhere in between there.
My I should probably cut this off. Hang on. Let me mute this real quick. Things are getting messed up.
I gotta say, in the beginning, none of it worked.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Hopefully everybody can hear each other again. We're back online.
I'll bring Gerald back on in 30 seconds, just letting this play first.
So
and
did this
hopefully
one.
the sound works.
This one, well, this one did something a little special we'll get into later. This one here was an attempt at, well, there's aluminum wire in there. So it was kind of a... it was a different sort of a test. I wrote everything out, but it didn't work for shit. Pardon the expression. This one worked. Had a unique feel to it. Does a couple of things I'll bring up in the near future. And this one here didn't work at all. It was wrapped with galvanized steel wire and copper. And the outcome that I was shooting for was a type of a heater, and I did not get it. And I built all types of coils. See, here's a Starship coil. That there's a Rodin coil. In the corner there is a Powers coil. This one here is my version of a Powers coil. This one is something entirely different that I built on my own, as well as that. And that little one there. that medium-sized one there. And they get smaller. That's an old jewel thief circuit, or at least wrapped for it. And those two coils are identical and unique in their own fashion. And there was my first attempt at a Tesla coil through a lid motor circuit, and a failure it was. But hey, we all have to learn somewhere, right? All right, so this is just a small taste of the coils that I've built in the past, and I've built a whole lot more, but this is all I can show you at the time. All right, everybody, have a great day.
Yeah, so let's head back. Hopefully, audio is still working here.
Gerald,
And,
are you there?
A few questions.
I'm back. I'm back. They don't like me.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's okay. We love you.
You got kicked your mic. Awesome. I love you guys back. You guys rock. I'm telling you. They cut my internet right down. Like I had to oh wow, it's crazy. I'm telling you. But what do you do?
Keep on doing, man. Keep on kicking it back on and fight the power.
We're all looking for the same thing. We're looking for the key that unlocks the molecular bonds to the infinite energy structure that governs our universe. We're going to find it. I'm telling you, we're going to find it.
Man, I couldn't have said it better. That is exactly it.
So that being said, these coil systems that are bifilar and fractal, they do something that's really neat. They allow you to capture the back EMF. My coils don't heat up. When I'm using them, they can heat up if I'm pumping mass amounts of energy into it and not pulling it out.
But as long as the energy basically stays cool.
Well, see, there's a fun part to that too. I'd have to bring up the experiment. They don't have it sitting in front of me, but I was using a 12-volt battery and I was using a jewel thief circuit, and I had this thing I think I was pumping it at 432 hertz. Might have been 528, I could be wrong. I'd have to check my notes, but the back end, the secondary was hooked up to a polypropylene capacitor, and then from there, it went to a 1,000 watt electric element, those little like stove elements that you'd use in your kitchen there. It's just one of those portable ones. I had it hooked up to that for a load, and I got half my power out of it. So I was using maybe 2.5 amps on the input, 12 volts, and I was getting out at least, this is an estimate, I'd say about 500 watts heat on that.
Yeah, because if that element is heating up, that's a really low resistance element. It has a very small number of turns. It's not generating light in the visible range, just black body radiation because it's deep into the IR. And just to be able to heat that up, I mean, if you took that 12-volt 1 amp power adapter and you connected that thing straight across the coil, you would basically be loading that power adapter to the maximum of its ability. Its 12 volts would drop way down to maybe 5 or 6 as it struggled to provide almost 2 amps, seeing that thing as a dead short. But nevertheless, in this case, it still got hot, which there's no reason at all it should be capable of doing that. It should not have been capable of heating it up at all.
It didn't get red hot, but I'll tell you, burn hand.
Yeah, and with 12 watts in, I mean, I challenge anybody with one of those elements, just connect a 12-volt 1 amp wall wart to that thing and see if they can get it hot enough to burn you.
No, the experiment that I'm discussing now, the one with the element, that was using the battery. It was actually 2 amps. Sorry to correct you on that.
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, even at 2.5 amps, even if you're talking, 36 watts, 3 amps at 12 volts, it's still going to have a lot of trouble getting that thing hot enough to burn you. It would have to sit there and heat for quite a while because that element is, like I said, it's a kilowatt element.
See, I think what most people don't understand when it comes to these coil systems is if you're using a bifilar system wrapped wine for wine, you're going to be able to capture that back EMF because a back EMF heats your, like in a solenoid coil, would heat your coil up if you were trying to pulse it for any long period of time, right? I can run this thing for 4 or 5 hours, no issues. Doesn't even get warm. In fact, I had 6 pickup coils around the outside, all wrapped at 60 wraps per pickup coil. I had my secondary running with 6 polypropylene 220 volt little small capacitors. I can't give you the farads in them offhand. I have them in front of me, but
I think I remember they were 330 nanofarads when we talked about it in the past. They were fairly small value, just enough to snub the super high frequency AC.
Yes, very small. So my pickup coils were all reading 56 volts. And then thunderstorm started outside, and the pickup coils jumped up to 61. So, you know, I don't know. Is it picking up background energy, or is it picking up etherical energy? Call it what you will. I don't know, but that was what the experiment showed. So I just wanted to bring that up.
And this is something I'm looking forward to trying too, because I can generate a thunderstorm-like electrostatic field and add the dynamics to it as well through moving disk plates, and I should be able to simulate the same kind of conditions in a thunderstorm and see if the thing changes its output based on those conditions externally superimposed.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things we're looking forward to. That the time differential using two separate separate 10 megahertz clocks, one that's located in the near field of the coil and one that's located at a reasonable distance, at least 6 feet away from the coil. If those two clocks shift in frequency but still generate a good clean signal, then we're going to know something really interesting is happening in terms of the temporal aspects of this device.
Well, I'll give you another experiment around that same experiment you just explained when it comes to temporal change, I guess you would say. I took an AM radio and I was pulsing my system at 7.83 hertz. And you could go outside the house by at least 50 feet and still hear it on AM radio. And all around my office. So maybe 85 feet in diameter, you could go on the outside of this coil and still hear the pulse on the AM radio itself. So if that helps you, you got to do that experiment too.
Yeah, what it really tells us is that the far field zone outside that coil is quite a distance away before it becomes electromagnetic, and even at that, it has an incredible range, just an absolutely ridiculous range that you wouldn't expect from that kind of device. Adam, who comes on here as Space Case Zero, has done a very similar experiment and had separated 2 parts of one machine that when they were synchronized, he was able to walk away with one of those 2 parts of that machine, a disc that looks like a piece of a Winchester machine, walk all the way down the street, almost 3/4 of a mile perhaps, and he had a home phone, wireless home phone in his pocket, and there's no way it could have had that kind of range. He knows the range of that thing is just, maybe 50 to 100 feet, but it was very, very much farther away than that, and he had one of these discs he was carrying with him down the street. So he gets a call where the phone rings in his pocket. He had actually forgot that it was with him. And he was able to communicate perfectly through this phone to a call from his dad that came through. But here's the interesting thing. He set this disc down and walked away with his wireless home phone, and the signal completely cut out. As soon as he went back closer to that thing, he was able to reestablish the signal very quickly. And the funny thing is, the other half of the machine was located near his house where the receiver was. So it seems that he was able to convey the entirety of the RF signal at a totally different frequency through this otherwise DC static device that looks like a Wimshurst machine. He called it the curious device. And so there does seem to be a very peculiar link through space and time where these things, once they get synchronized, they can communicate information at very large distances in almost a lossless manner.
That's something I haven't tried yet. I look forward to actually trying.
Yeah, when we get down to synchronized coils, it's going to be pretty incredible.
Yes, I look forward to that by far.
Let me go through the chat.
Yeah, that is amazing. So this Gerald's channel
Just for
is
a day,
small
not
here.
full for a full day, just 3 times in the first day, and then I threw them in their jar, and they grew. I would have to say close to 25% faster than the rest of them. Ooh, did we lose them?
No, we still got it. I think we still
Nice.
got it.
Yeah, you guys are
so.
still here. You can hear it all.
Yeah. So what he's really saying,
I
yeah,
see the cycle,
it's
so
25% faster growth just by pulsing that coil for a couple of seconds once a day.
yeah, I had 2 jars, okay, and one of the jars was just regular. It was your oh, sorry, Paul, it's a scratch. Was your regular in the jar with just water, no pulsation, no coil application whatsoever. The second jar, I applied it only 3 times the first day, and that was it. And the second jar, the one that I had pulsed, it dropped 25% of its growth time. And the plants looked greener and lusher, but that could be a matter of bias because, you know, I wanted them to look greener and lusher. So the experiment definitely has to be done independently by somebody else. But the time, it was definitely 25% faster.
Yeah, and we're going to find out very shortly here, as soon as we have a chance to verify these systems.
I
because
believe you.
Independently and give you those charts.
Either way, you willed it into being, but like with the greenerness, and just a couple times a day you were pulsing. Like, imagine if it was constantly. That's intense. And Daniel Nunez channel, they've also shown some coils where they were doing and testing the same thing with plants. Myself this year with the Ormus or monoatomic waters on my garden, it seems like it's grown 3 times the size where I've watered it. And there's just so much coming out with this energy and testing it on plants, and it's the key thing to do. So I'm super stoked to see you do more of that, Gerald, on that regard, and hopefully you'll be able to upload it to your channel. You guys still there? Do we still have a Jeremiah, and a Gerald? Gerald? And Jeremiah? You still here, Jeremiah? Jeremiah. Oh, maybe maybe they kicked him off again. Let's see here. I will play another video in the meantime, and hopefully they come right back. Looks like Jeremiah's trying to get back, or just logged out, so hopefully we're trying to come back in right away.
Hey everyone, just thought I would do a video on some of the coils that I've built in the past from beginning to end. It's the kind of thing I started out, I don't know, 2005 roughly, 2008, somewhere in between there. And these are the kind of things I've built. Now I gotta say, in the beginning, none of it. I mean, talk about a learning curve.
Nice. So I'm going to go ahead.
Essentially pushes.
Go ahead.
And this one charged a couple batteries. So did this one. This one did something a little special we'll get into later. This one here was an attempt at, well, there's aluminum wire in there. So it was kind of it was a different sort of a test. I wrote everything out, but it didn't work for shit. Pardon the expression. This one worked. Had a unique feel to it. Does a couple of things I'll bring up in the near future. And this one here didn't work at all. It was wrapped with galvanized steel wire and copper. and the outcome that I was shooting for was a type of a heater, and I did not get it. And I built all types of coils. Here's a.
All right, Bernie, we're back.
Here's a Starship coil. Out there.
Perfect.
All right,
we
so
got Gerald back.
As soon as you talk about food, they just don't like that. They don't like people knowing that you can grow food faster than normal. This whole food scarcity thing. Come on.
Exactly.
Like, look,
isn't that the truth?
did a whole bunch of experiments. So, like, we can do this. You know what I mean? I'm a nobody in a basement, so to speak, and I'm doing things that they say can't be done. So I believe fully that in the near future, I'm hoping the very near future, all of us are going to get one of these sitting in our homes, and it's going to help produce power. It's going to give off a free the superhuman healing ability on that's already been installed in our DNA and in our body. And I believe that can be accessed through frequency. And I believe that that same system, as you're accessing it, could be producing your house with power. I believe that.
Well, let's see if this one gets us kicked, because so now that we're back online, yeah, this question is coming from Phil, and he's working on something he calls finite theory. And he's asking about the proximity effect of surfaces. So let's, as far as the operation of the device in either propulsion mode, if you want to call it that, or generating the force, and its ability to also produce power outputs. So what is the effect of different materials, or any materials that are close to this thing? Is there an influence at all, or does it not matter? I think is what he's asking.
It doesn't really matter, I would have to say, because it creates its own field. Basically 0 point. I mean, the system itself, it's the center of the field, and it almost pushes off itself. I know I'm not quite explaining that properly, because there's some things that I'm leaving out. I'm hoping to do a future conference and explain it properly and do a little bit of a demonstration. So I don't want to let too much out right here, but basically, no, material doesn't matter, because it creates its own field and pushes off the existing fields that are already around it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Jeremiah still there? We getting attacked yet again? Oh my. I think we lost Jeremiah and Gerald yet again. Oh, you're back. You're still
this
there?
Is usually what happens. Everybody's
still hear you again.
Oh, here we go. We got back on without getting kicked. Nice.
Are you still there? Or did we lose them all over again?
Man.
Oh, we're back.
We're back for a bit. Let's see if this goes through. We'll wait for Bernie's voice to come through.
I can hear you again.
Okay, we're going to try this one more time. Right. It's like 3 times in a row. Go ahead.
So we apologize, everybody, but when you're over the target, usually you get hit. So that's how it is, right? I'm not sure if you caught the answer to that question. Basically, no, material doesn't matter. It produces its own field, inner and outer. So I'm hoping to do, like I said, a presentation in a very
And I think we lost him again.
a rodent coil. In the corner there is a powers coil. This one here is my version of a powers coil. This one is something entirely different that I built on my own, as well as that.
We can still hear you, so maybe you can talk over the back.
Medium-sized one there.
Yeah, we just keep on.
And they get smaller. That's an old jewel thief circuit, or at least these two coils are identical and unique in their own fashion. And there was my first attempt at a Tesla coil through a lid motor circuit, and a failure it was. But hey, we all have to learn somewhere, right? All right, so this is
we can almost hear you.
Freaking good then. Yeah. At least Gerald's response got through.
Indeed, indeed. Well, I guess they are messing with this pretty badly. We are at 2 hours here. Frank, you got any last questions? Or Jeremiah, got anything to discuss quickly before we wrap this up then, as they are majorly messing with us right meow?
Well, I'll tell you what, Bernie, I'm going to hop off here, and when I do, obviously Gerald is coming through my Zoom right now, so that'll be cut too. So we're going to have a ending conversation and leave it at that, and then we'll want to do another show, a pre-show, probably before the conference, if that's something that we can pull off. And hopefully that'll be waiting a little while before we get all the data, because we want to cover some of the safety concerns and a variety of other things that go along with the system that we think are really pertinent to know before anybody starts experimenting with something like this. And so
yeah, this was very impromptu. I apologize, guys. I wasn't exactly prepared.
Oh.
That's okay. Mike from Space wasn't either.
Thank you for coming on, Gerald, and everything you're doing as well, Jeremiah. We greatly appreciate it. So we can hear you guys again right now. So if you want to quickly get your conclusion in before it disappears, and we should be good.
Yeah, I'll ask Gerald one more question for the audience, which is if you have to point anybody in the right direction as they're starting to experiment around with this stuff before they really, I guess you would say, have the keys or have the information on what the wind looks like and what the energy input looks like and how to actually control the system. I mean, what direction would you point people in to start looking or researching or getting their heads up on preparing to do this kind of research?
Well, if you were just to look at the research and start, I would say start with John Bendini, and if you were starting to wrap these coils, I would look at a gentleman by the name of Mike Powers. He explains some of the mechanism on how to wrap it.
Yeah, that is an excellent video. Yeah, Mike Powers has a video called 24-point counterwound star chalice. If you want to look up the terms for that, should be able to find it with the 24-point counterwound star chalice search terms, and that will give you the basic principles of winding scheme. It won't necessarily reveal everything. Even Mike Powers isn't exactly completely clear with all the information that comes through, and he's deleted a lot of videos that were supposed to be follow-ups explaining part of this, which I don't know why he ended up taking them back down, but I guess he didn't want to end up with his channel deleted like so many others who have played around with this tech before have had their channels wiped and they've gone and since disappeared. So it's a good place to start, though, and just understanding pin jumps and pin counts and different geometries are pretty well covered in that system.
Yeah, and as far as experimenting with coils goes, Russ Grease is a good one. He does a few star chalice coils and miniatures, and he's a good guy to sort of get an idea on how he started out on it. How I started out was kind of watching him and watching a lot of schoolgirl circuits with John Bendini and lots of people playing around there, lid motor, this, that, and the other. So, yeah,
Yeah, and we have one more
Do your
question
research.
from Pablo here. He's asking, he's just trying to get a rough estimate of where you think the feed frequency of the coil might be around, what kind of signal, what kind of input. Yeah, and these guys are asking about specifically hoppers. So he's just wondering, like, if they're going to play around with different geometries and try things themselves, what kind of input would you recommend that they play with, or what kind of power inputs or power supplies would you recommend people maybe pick up ahead of time if they want to replicate this in a fast fashion?
You know what? For safety purposes, I would go really low. I would start off with 12 volt 1 amp, no more than that. I know that sounds really insane, but these systems, until you understand them, they can hurt you. Like, I wouldn't want to take my coil and jam 6,000 volts through it and hope that it's going to hop without doing any damage to myself. You're talking mass amounts of potential. This coil system seems to amplify your potential. So it's not a toy, is basically what I'm saying. So start slow, 12 amps or 12 volts 1 amp on your impulse. And as far as frequency goes, until you start to see how your bipolar system is going to work in that coil, I would use like 7.83, which is like the same, like 7.83 hertz. It's the same pulse rate as the heartbeat of the Earth, give or take.
And that would be really for like power generation and checking the coil parameters as far as its input and output.
Yeah, that's basically as you start out. But as far as power frequency goes, I was using 261 hertz, which is a good frequency for seed growth and plant growth as well. And I was using 880 hertz as well. Those three frequencies they're good start frequencies.
Awesome. And then a lot of people are still asking about the high voltage circuitry, which now you have a prototype DIY board, which is built off parts from Amazon that are widely available to pretty much everybody. So if that thing ends up working, that would be really, really awesome, because I guess we'll have to find out before we can really say, right, yeah, we'll have to find out if that system works, or if you have to tune it and it doesn't work right off the bat. I'll tell you how to tune that little schematic so that you can get any output that you need from it in terms of frequency and current. But yeah, it should be, I guess once we get that, then we can say for sure what frequencies and voltages it really needs as far as the high voltage side to be put into the system so that it can perform force generation or movement on its own.
Exactly. Was there anything else you wanted to ask?
I would say that's pretty good. So we should probably hop off the live stream for now and then finish this up on private.
Hey guys, before you do, can you guys hear me?
Yep, for sure. Ask away.
I had a couple things I wanted to say. I know it's getting late, but I feel like I have a pretty good point. I was waiting to present it. Do you mind if you give me like just 5 minutes of your time? And because I feel like I discovered something, and specifically right to the coils, sort of. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but our connection is getting buffered very badly.
Oh,
so,
okay.
I'll tell you what. I'll wait for it to finish loading this window, and then I'll tell you when it's up. I think that you're coming through right now, but I'm not sure if this is actually getting through or not. It's weird because it's like sometimes time it won't work.
Right. I feel like I've made a breakthrough with coils, and I haven't told anyone yet, and I need to tell someone.
Okay, go ahead. Let it out there.
Okay. So I hope you can hear me. So I discovered a video where when looking into the pyramids, that where every object being a magnet, if you take a rod magnet and you bend it into a pyramid or a cone, basically what you're doing is taking two magnetic fields and you're pushing them into each other, right? And that's one of the many reasons the pyramid was made. And basically there's a diagram on this. What you're doing is you're basically, and there's a dude who put two magnetic fields. So what he did was he made an object that had, it was probably a sphere. And he put two magnets inside, stuck them together, and made it the same weight as the other object. The other one he took really high-powered neodymium magnets, and he pushed them together. So they're the same weight, same drag, and he dropped them off of a building and recorded it over and over again.
Yeah,
and
you're talking about Boyd Bushman's experience with cramming 2 neodymium magnets, poles facing, so that their fields were projected. Now, I've done that same experiment, and I've checked the magnetic field strength. So here's something interesting. If you push or force 2 magnets together so that their poles are opposing, the field lines that would normally extend equidistant and be symmetrical on both sides, they all get forced out of the center, and they end up projecting themselves much farther to the outside than would normally be present. So if you take a magnetic field meter or a compass, even something as simple as a compass, and check it against Earth's geomagnetic field, you'll find that you have a farther range when they're pressing against each other. What Boyd did was connect those things together, put them inside of a rock, or something that looked like a rock that was hollowed out, and dropped that into a normal-looking rock, right? And then the other one showed up at a different time. The rock with the magnets out of it, with poles cramped together, showed up at a different time. Always first. It fell faster, which is really interesting, than the other rock that didn't have anything inside of it. So,
did that have anything to do with where the sun was relative to the Earth? Maybe, I don't know. But my point was, though, when you bend these magnetic fields, so if you were to take a rodent star coil, let's say, like I've done, and give me 2 seconds, okay? Can you see me?
I think Jeremiah got disconnected again.
Man, I hope you guys can text me your number, because I have a lot of questions.
Everything in the private chat right now. And yeah, hopefully Jeremiah gets back on here right away. I'm just going to step back inside, and we will end the stream and keep it going private. I'll post the StreamYard link in the live chat before we go. But keep talking. If you guys have questions, discuss them now as I get back inside here.
Perfect. Okay. I'm not sure if you guys can see this. Maybe. So I'm thinking, so there's all these talks about the bottom chakra.
Can you show it again?
Lotus. Yeah,
Frankie,
sure.
just lift it up.
Oh, yeah. Basically what it is it's, so this is a rodent star coil, and it's weaved counterclockwise from this one inside of the next one. It's shaped in the name of a lotus. That bottom chakra is a lotus, and there's always a snake coming out of it. And the Egyptians had the snake coming out of the forehead, right in the mind's eye area. And I think this is a water spinning device. And if you were to put magnetic ball like I have here, and you powered this up at different frequencies, so by bending the rodent star coil up, you're doing the same thing that the pyramid does, and you're aiming this. You're turning what magnetically, you're turning what would be this light into a laser. That's my theory. And I can show you some videos to where. Okay, so I wonder if I can I share?
We're gonna have to do it on the next one, Frankie.
Okay.
It was a blast, everyone.
I'm pretty sure I'm onto something, but sorry.
Oh, don't be sorry, man. There was a lot to cover, a lot of presenters today, and we didn't get through everything we were hoping, but I have to go. I'm about to go on with Campbell, hopped on the Stuff B.
Are you really?
Here. So
you're going to be on another podcast right now?
And yeah, so we will be doing, since near the coil, there's going to be a lot more of these coil videos. Make sure you check out Mike Faraday's channel, Faraday Research, as well as Mike from Space, his YouTube channel, Rumble, as well as, of course, Jeremiah and Gerald's WPG, Enlighten for Truth. Is it Jay? Which Jay? Is this Jeremiah or a different Jay?
Bernie, thanks for having me. I really appreciate being on.
Much love. Any last words, anybody, before we end this? No? All right. Okay, on that note, love you all, and we will catch you on the next one.